Good morning, you're watching Daybreak with me, Nadia Jani, your host, taking you through the day's top stories. Let's take a look at the headlines. Iran declares Strait of Hormuz closed, threatening to set fire to ships as the US warns tougher strikes are ahead. France to boost nuclear warheads and strengthen deterrence, raising global nuclear conflict risks. And videos of Bill and Hillary Clinton's Epstein testimonies are released. First, this morning, Iran has warned it will set fire to any ships trying to pass through the strategic Strait of Hormuz and target Gulf shipping, a vital route for global oil. Since the conflict, oil prices have risen and shipping traffic through the passage has dropped significantly due to security risks, while Washington says its mission is focused on destroying Iran's missile and naval capabilities, insisting it is not targeting civilian infrastructure.
Iran has warned that US military bases in the Gulf could be targeted as the air campaign enters its third day. Tehran has also declared the Strait of Hormuz closed, threatening to fire on ships attempting to pass. US Central Command says the waterway remains open, but energy markets are already on edge. Around 1/5 of the world's oil supply normally moves through the narrow channel. Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi said Tehran does not want the conflict to spread, but argued that American facilities across the region are within reach.
When the United States attacks us, whether by fighter jets or the ships it deploys, they have access to our territory to strike with all kinds of missiles and aircraft. We cannot reach their territory, but we can reach their bases. I think those bases are legitimate targets.
He also urged neighboring governments to pressure Washington rather than Tehran. Meanwhile, Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu claimed the campaign would not become an endless war, but acknowledged it could take time.
I said it could be quick and decisive. It may take some time, but it's not going to take years. It's not an endless war. In fact, it's an effort right now to achieve the peace that we all yearn and pray for. And I think together we'll achieve it.
In Washington, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth said the operation is limited to destroying Iran's ballistic missile and naval capabilities. Secretary of State Marco Rubio echoed that objective.
That said, we would not mind, we would not be heartbroken, and we hope that the Iranian people can overthrow this government and establish a new future for that country. We would love for that to be possible. But the objective of this mission is the destruction of their ballistic missile capabilities and of their naval capabilities.
Rubio also responded to Iranian reports that a school in Manab was struck, reportedly killing civilians. He said the United States would not deliberately target a school and that the military is reviewing the incident. On the ground, the US military says it has struck more than 1,250 targets inside Iran and destroyed 11 Iranian ships. 6 American service members have been killed and 18 injured. Iranian authorities say at least 555 people have been killed across 131 cities, though those figures have not been independently verified. Washington says 49 senior Iranian leaders, including Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei, were killed in the opening strikes.
Now let's take a look at the stories shaping the day across the globe, and we head first to the New York Times, and they have live updates. Iran escalates retaliatory strikes as US signals a long battle. Now we do know that recently, over this course of early this morning, the US embassy in Riyadh was attacked by 2 drones. By Tehran over, as it mentioned, it's attacking US military bases. Now, Tehran's historic Golden Palace was also on the list, and it was also targeted by US strikes over the course of the weekend as well. Now, the Vice President J.D. Vance said in an interview with Fox News that the US is not going to get into a long, dragged-out conflict for years. Trump said that the operation could continue for some weeks and that it was unclear who was in charge of Iran. But we do do know that the US is calling for a new leadership to take on, and for the people of Iran to very much push that forward. It's Trump's and the US's objective to make sure that there are no nuclear weapons, which is its main primary goal as well in regards to this. We know that it's the third day of the conflict since it spread since Saturday, and loads of things have been impacted by this. Now, I just want to take you through to a map that I'm going to show you in more detail as to where the strikes actually took place. So if we scroll a bit down to the next story that has a map. So Reuters shows more detail in relation to what this map looks like in relation to the strikes that hit Iran and the US bases across the Middle East. And in that, we will see exactly where those drones were situated. As we know, there were centers in the United Arab Emirates were directly struck by drones in the region as well. So in some of this, we can see that the US military strikes, they're currently, this is showing just the airspace in general. And if we keep scrolling all the way down, we'll go to where there is red and blue of the different places that the US and Tehran has struck. So keep going all the way down. I think they've added more pictures to all this just to basically illustrate the point a little bit more further. There should be some more maps at the bottom coming up so that I can go through that with you. Brilliant. As I mentioned, it's the third day of the conflict between the two countries, as well as Israel, who has done a joint attack with the US in relation to this, which all broke out over the course of Saturday morning into Sunday with retaliatory attacks from Tehran, saying that they are doing this in response to the strikes that the US said that they are putting them through. And with this map coming up, it will show a bit more information in relation to what and where the Iran strikes took place and what is being done in regards to the US as well. So this is an overview of the map. So different places, we can see the Strait of Hormuz, we can see Iran's territory and region, and then you can see the UEA and the Middle East all throughout that section right there. And if we keep scrolling down, we'll also see some more detail in regards to where the US bases are and where Iran also struck. In regards to that, just to add, oil prices have risen for the third day, which was reported in our earlier report that you saw before, as well as a number of flights as well being done. So in this map that is coming up, sorry, there's so much information. Here we are. This map here. So in red, we have that's where the US shows the US, all the places that the US has struck. So all in red, these points signal what the US has done. And in blue is the retaliatory Iran attacks as well, that shows that it's done going through the Middle East. So the Gulf states, Oman, UAE, Qatar, Kuwait, all these places that also have been struck as well. Now, Iranian officials have warned the country will set fire to any ships trying to pass through the Strait of Hormuz, which was stated as well. The other thing that this conflict is impacting is flights. Flights are a big thing, and because of that, a number of flights have been redirected because of the airspace and the drones that are being used. And I just want to show you a quick video so that you can see exactly what I'm referring to. So this video here shows that whole middle area, which is the Gulf region, and a number of countries. As you can see, Iran straight bang in the middle there. That space is now empty airspace because of the escalating conflict that has led to significant disruptions with airlines adjusting their routes. We know that Dubai International Airport is one of the busiest and handles at least 1,000 flights a day. Now that has remained closed because of the conflict, so it's the fourth day going into that. So I just wanted to highlight that so you can see exactly how the airspace around that looks, and you can just see where the flights are all being redirected through and around here. But we'll make sure that we keep you up to date with what's going on with this particular story. We now move over to Al Jazeera and this particular story in Nepal in regards to what is taking place there. Now, Nepal rivals rally on final day of poll campaign. PM urges citizens to vote. So they are currently going through elections, and its interim prime minister, which is Sushila Karki, has appealed to people to vote and maintain the peace. Now, we know that the Himalayan Republic will elect a new parliament on Thursday, replacing the interim government that has led the country of 30 million people since September 2025. when there was an uprising that killed, where at least 77 people were killed. Now, 2 weeks of campaigning has showcased a number of different candidates that are being elected. Now, we know that there's a young wave of younger candidates promising to tackle Nepal's struggling economy, and nearly 90 million people have registered to vote. So it's a major turnout that we're going to see. And now there are a few runners that I just want to quickly take you through. We've got Gigan Thapa, who's 49, the new head of the country's oldest party, Nepali Congress, as well. And then we've also got Mayor Balendra Shah, a 35-year-old rapper turned politician. He's very, very popular amongst the Gen Z voters. And we also have KP Sharma Oli. Now, he's the 74-year-old Marxist leader who was ousted as Prime Minister last year and also running to hopefully remain in power in the course of the next few days when we have the results. Okay, now we quickly go to the Guardian website and what's taking place there. Now, because of, we go to the BBC website and what's taking place there. Now, at least 169 people have been killed in South Sudan's surprise attack. Now, this unfortunately was something that was reported over the weekend and is extremely devastating for those in Sudan right now. There's a number of organizations calling for humanitarian efforts to be realized in that particular area. But of those 169 people, there were women and children were killed on Sunday. Now, a group of unidentified men launched the assault on an area in the north of the country, and it's alleged that these attacks came from neighboring Unity State and were linked to the Sudan's People's Liberation Army in opposition. But that particular group have denied any involvement, accusing the Unity State authorities of politicizing the violence. Now, the UN, as I mentioned, has repeatedly warned that the country is at risk of sliding back into a full-scale civil war, which is not something anybody wants. Now, the dead, as I mentioned, include 90 children, women and elderly people, including regional forces and a police. Now, along with that, 50 others were wounded, and the Rugag Administrative Areas Information Minister, James Monluak Mijok, said the government forces had since driven the attackers out and that authorities were now in full control. And if we quickly go to the next headline, which is on the Guardian website, and that's in regards to France 24. Sorry, that's France 24, and it's in relation to Macron. We have to be feared. Macron says that he's now making sure that increased nuclear warheads will take place in the country. He announced this on Monday in regards to this, and we have more information on this report coming up in the course of the programme, which I will provide you with more information on. Now, that's all the stories shaping the day across the globe. We're now going to take a short break, and when I return, I'll go through the rest of the stories this morning.
The global defense industry plays a vital role in ensuring national security. In Turkey, companies in this sector strengthen domestic production and enhance military independence.
ISA-based radar, Murat radar. This is fully digital radar. This is new for world. Aselsan today, Turkish technology leader and global technology provider.
Gökdeniz atışı hazır. 3, 2, 1, ateş. Hedef imha edildi.
I'm Nuray Mustafa. This is One on One.
Welcome back. You're watching Daybreak with me, Nadia Jani. Now I'm going to take you through the rest of the global stories for this morning. And we head first to Qatar, which has stopped its production of liquefied natural gas on Monday as Iran decided to continue its strike to the Gulf countries in retaliation for Israeli and US strikes against it, prompting precautionary shutdowns of oil and gas facilities across the Middle East. Qatar accounts for approximately 20% of global LNG supply, making it central to energy markets in Asia and Europe. Operations were disrupted as Saudi Arabia's largest domestic refinery, much of Iraqi Kurdistan's oil production, and several Israeli gas fields curbing exports to Egypt. The conflict in the Middle East is also impacting oil prices, which has surged, and stock markets have fallen after US and Israeli strikes on Iran raised fears over shipping through the Strait of Hormuz.
Oil prices jumped sharply at the start of trading after the United States and Israel carried out major strikes on Iran, escalating the conflict in the Gulf. Brent crude briefly surged by more than 10% in early trading before easing back, but it remains significantly higher. At the same time, stock markets across Asia fell as traders reacted to concerns over possible supply disruptions. Gold prices climbed as investors sought safer assets. The immediate concern is the Strait of Hormuz, the narrow waterway through which roughly 1/5 of the world's oil and large volumes of liquefied natural gas pass each day. Following the strikes, said vessels had come under attack near the area. Some shipping companies have halted transit and tanker traffic has slowed, with vessels waiting on either side of the strait. OPEC Plus has agreed a modest increase in output, yet experts say that will not matter if shipments cannot move. Economists say the key factor now is duration. If tensions ease quickly, markets may stabilize. If fighting continues, energy prices could remain elevated, adding further strain to the global economy.
Early this morning, the US Embassy in Riyadh was hit by 2 drones, causing a small fire and some damage, Saudi media reported. The Defense Ministry confirmed the attack on X and shared an initial report. The strike comes after US and Israeli attacks on Iran and ongoing Iranian drone and missile strikes on Gulf states with US bases. The embassy was empty at the time. Sources say the fire was minor and no one was hurt. Black smoke rose over the diplomatic quarter and a loud blast was heard with flames around the building. US President Donald Trump said on Monday he had ordered the attack on Iran to thwart Tehran's nuclear development and a ballistic missile program that he said was growing rapidly. He signaled that Iran operation could extend beyond the initial 4 to 5 week timeline.
Today, the United States military continues to carry out large-scale combat operations in Iran to eliminate the grave threats posed to America by this terrible terrorist regime. Following our obliteration of Iran's nuclear program in Operation Midnight Hammer a short while ago, we warned Iran not to make any attempt to rebuild at a different location because they were unable to use the ones that we so powerfully blew up. But they ignored those warnings and refused to cease their pursuit of nuclear weapons. In addition, the regime's conventional ballistic missile program was growing rapidly and dramatically, and this posed a very clear, colossal threat to America and our forces stationed overseas.
Following on from this, Iran's security chief Ali Larijani stressed that Tehran will not enter into talks with the United States after it has plunged the region into chaos, while top diplomat Abbas Araghchi said Iran does not want war with its neighbors hosting US bases and remains open to diplomacy.
Iran's Secretary of Supreme National Security Council, Ali Larijani, has categorically rejected talks with the United States, stressing that Tehran will not negotiate with Washington as the Israel-US invasion of Iran entered its 3rd day on Monday. Larijani, who was a senior aide to Iran's former supreme leader killed on Saturday in the air raids, also warned that US President Donald Trump's false hopes and new lies have plunged the region into chaos, increasing the risk of further American troops' casualties. His statements on X social platform were made after Trump's remarks on Sunday about Tehran's reaching out for talks, as well as the confirmation by U.S. military sources that 3 of its soldiers were killed and 5 wounded in Iran's attacks. However, Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi left the door of diplomacy ajar, stating that Tehran remains open to de-escalation. In phone talks with his regional counterparts, including mediator Oman, he described Iran's attacks on U.S. bases in the regional countries as legitimate acts of self-defense. Also in a post on his X account, he said air attacks on capital have not changed Iran's war capabilities, adding that Tehran is the party to decide when and how the war will end. Meantime, Revolutionary Guards released a new footage of its underground UAV bases, showing firing them against Israel. Since Saturday, IRGC has announced in series of statements the waves of missiles and UAV raids against Israel, as well as U.S. assets in the region, saying the retaliatory attacks will continue with more sophisticated weapons. Turad Shiralidu, reporting from Tehran for A News.
Air defense rockets lit up southern Beirut early this morning as clashes between Israel and Hezbollah intensified. A large explosion was reported in the Babda district, while airstrikes by the US and Israel on Iran have further raised tensions in the region. Officials say a ground invasion of Lebanon is not currently planned.
Air defense rockets lit up the sky over southern Beirut early on Tuesday as tensions between Israel and Hezbollah escalated. The flare-up follows recent operations by the US and Israel against Iran, which triggered retaliation by Hezbollah and a widening regional conflict. In the latest exchanges, Israeli airstrikes on Beirut's southern suburbs and other parts of southern Lebanon have killed at least 31 people, with many more wounded, according to Lebanon's health ministry. The Israeli military said it hit a senior Hezbollah fighter in Beirut without providing further details. Earlier, Israel had declared Hezbollah leader Naim Qassem a target for elimination. Lebanese authorities condemned the rocket attacks and Israeli strikes, stressing that Lebanon should not become a battleground for regional conflicts. The government emphasized that the decision of war and peace rests solely with the state, and that Hezbollah's security and military activities are now prohibited. These developments underline a rapid escalation in the Middle East as regional actors continue to react to the US-Israeli campaign against Iran and its allies.
The International Atomic Energy Agency says it has no indication that recent Israeli and US military attacks on Iran have struck any nuclear facilities. The IAEA Director General Rafael Grossi told the agency's Board of Governors at an emergency meeting in Vienna. Grossi reported that radiation levels remain normal in countries bordering Iran, with no abnormal increases detected despite recent events. However, he noted that efforts to re-establish contact with the Iranian nuclear regulatory authorities through the Incident and Emergency Center have so far been unsuccessful.
So far, no elevation of radiation levels above the usual background levels has been detected in countries bordering Iran. Regarding the status of the nuclear installations in Iran, up to now, we have no indication that any of the nuclear installations, including the Bushehr nuclear power plant, the Tehran research reactor, or other nuclear fuel cycle facilities, have been damaged or hit.
Turning to France, and President Emmanuel Macron has said it will increase the size of its nuclear arsenal and strengthen its deterrent with an increasing risk of conflicts globally crossing the nuclear threshold. Macron said a major change would see more cooperation with European allies. He added that Germany, but also Poland, the Netherlands, Belgium and Denmark would be able to take part in French nuclear war games.
Et pour être craint, il faut l'Allemagne.
Germany will naturally be a key partner in this effort, the most ambitious in the spirit of the Aachen Treaty. The first stages of cooperation will begin this year and may include visits to strategic sites and joint exercises. From now on, other countries have accepted this dialogue. And beyond our British and German partners and friends already mentioned, Poland, the Netherlands, Belgium, Greece, Sweden and Denmark will join it. This is a genuine strategic convergence between our countries of a nature to give real depth to the defense of our continent. As for our American allies, who themselves are modernizing their arsenal, they have played since 1945 and will continue to play a key role in the defense of Europe. We are grateful to them for this. And in terms of deterrence, they participate directly in our protection with NATO's nuclear mission. But their recent national security and defense strategy shows a rearrangement of American priorities and a strong encouragement for Europe to take more direct care of its own security.
As of the latest updates on Epstein's links to the Clintons, former US President Bill Clinton and former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton have testified behind closed doors about their ties to Jeffrey Epstein, with both denying any knowledge of his crimes. We now have released footage of what all that came about last week.
Do you wish to provide an opening statement?
On Monday, former US President Bill Clinton and former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton denied any prior knowledge of crimes committed by convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein during separate closed-door testimonies before the United States House Committee on Oversight and Accountability. Bill Clinton told lawmakers he never witnessed wrongdoing and said his wife had nothing to do with Jeffrey Epstein. He confirmed writing a note for Epstein's 50th birthday, said photos in the files were likely taken in Brunei, and added he does not recognize a redacted woman shown in the images.
I'm here to offer what little I know so I can do my part to prevent something like this from happening again. I have to just say one personal thing. Since Hillary came in yesterday, she had nothing to do with Jeffrey Epstein. Nothing.
Hillary Clinton told lawmakers she does not recall ever meeting Epstein and said she had no information about his criminal activities.
As we all know, however, too often congressional investigations are partisan political theater, which is an abdication of duty and an insult to the American people. This committee justified its subpoena to me based on its assumption that I have information regarding the investigations into the criminal activities of Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. Let me be as clear as I can. I do not. As I stated in my sworn declaration on January 13th, I had no idea about their criminal activities. I do not recall ever encountering Mr. Epstein. I never flew on his plane or visited his island, homes, or offices. I have nothing to add to that. Like every decent person, I've been horrified by what we have learned about their crimes.
Tensions rose during her private deposition when she learned that a photograph taken inside the hearing had been leaked, breaching committee rules. She threatened to end her testimony. Proceedings were briefly paused and the image was later removed. During questioning, Hillary Clinton was asked how she felt after seeing photographs of her husband in the Epstein files. Clinton replied that she was not there to offer opinions or speculate. So far, there is no suggestion that either of the Clintons has been accused of criminal wrongdoing in connection with Epstein.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said that Ukraine is ready to send drone specialists if Middle Eastern leaders can help broker a ceasefire with Russia. He added that a new round of US brokered trilateral peace talks with Russia due this week has not been cancelled despite recent strikes by the US and Israel on Iran. The talks are scheduled for the 5th of March in Abu Dhabi, but could instead be held in Turkey or Switzerland if required, Zelensky said.
The Middle East has close economic ties, relations with the Russian Federation, and has influence. If they give Russia a signal to cease fire, for example, for a certain period of time, a month, 2 months, we can then send our specialists to protect the civilian population.
Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney has arrived in Australia today, aiming to strengthen cooperation between the two countries in the middle of rising global tensions. The two countries plan to work together on critical minerals, defence, maritime security, trade and artificial intelligence. Carney also invited Japan and visited Japan and India, where he restored relations with New Delhi and signed trade deals after a year of tensions. One of the Netherlands' leading museums is unveiling a remarkable rediscovery after years out of public view. A painting long held in a private collection has now been authenticated as an original work by Rembrandt. Experts at the Amsterdam's Rijksmuseum say detailed technical analysis has confirmed the attribution, allowing the work to go on display for the first time in decades.
Researchers at the Netherlands Rijksmuseum have authenticated a painting as a genuine work by Rembrandt, placing it back in the public eye for the first time in decades. Following a 2-year investigation, experts confirmed that the Vision of Zacharias in the temple was painted by Rembrandt van Rijn in 1633 when he was in his late 20s. The work is currently on long-term loan to the museum from an anonymous private collector. The painting depicts the biblical moment in which the high priest Zacharias learns from the archangel Gabriel that he and his wife, despite their advanced age, will have a son, John the Baptist. Notably, Rembrandt does not paint Gabriel directly. Instead, light entering from the upper right corner signals the angel's presence. Curators say the artwork had not been accessible to scholars or the public for decades.
The painting was purchased by the father of the current owner in 1961, and since then has not been seen by researchers or anyone else, the public at large.
To verify its authenticity, researchers used advanced imaging techniques, including pigment analysis comparable to X-ray examination.
And with that technique, it's a type of X-ray technique, but with that technique you can see which pigments, what paint was used by Rembrandt. With examining that, we discovered that all of the pigments, all of the paint in this painting can be found in other paintings by Rembrandt.
The authentication marks a significant addition to Rembrandt's scholarship and offers the public a rare opportunity to view a work unseen for generations.
Over to a quick break now. When I return, I'll be joined by an in-guest studio to discuss the recent regional conflict in this part of the world. So make sure you stay with us.
And welcome to Primetime. What a show we've got lined up for you. In a complex world, clarity is power. Two hours live, diplomacy dissected in a spin-free environment. That's Prime Time with me, Guy Schoen, weekdays on A News.
Welcome back. Now, let's turn to the regional top stories happening across here. And in light of the rapidly intensifying confrontation in and around the Islamic Republic of Iran, questions of regional security in the South Caucasus have moved to the forefront. A key concern is the extent to which countries in this region must act carefully to ensure that the widening escalation does not spill northward. Joining me now to discuss this is Rusaf Husanov, Director of the Top Chebashov Center in Baku think tank. Welcome to the program.
Good morning, Nadia.
Good morning. My first question is, what is your overall evaluation of the unfolding situation in Iran, and how dangerous is that for the South Caucasus?
If we try to look at the geopolitical developments which are happening around us, it's not only about Iran. To our north, we have Russia-Ukraine war. To our south, it's Iran and wider Middle East. To our east, it's Central Asia and South Asia, where Afghanistan and Pakistan are waging war, which is nowadays a little bit underreported due to Iran, but also violent conflict is unfolding there. In this interesting geopolitical environment, however paradoxical it may sound, the South Caucasus, the core of which is Azerbaijan and Armenia, is presenting an island of stability. This is really an interesting moment, because for the past 30-35 years, in studios like this, we would always speak about how the conflict around Karabakh would serve as a source of instability for the entire region. But nowadays, we see how South Caucasus is trying to avoid, stay away from this violent conflict. And I received a text message from one of American experts immediately after the outbreak of the war in Iran, and among other questions, he asked me why Azerbaijan was still not affected and hit by Iran. It's really interesting, because the oversimplified answer is that we as Azerbaijan do not have any US military bases in this very country. But if we somehow try to elaborate this question a little bit more, it's also about careful balancing policy of the authorities based in Baku. However, we have to be very, very careful, because Iran has already switched to this decentralized mosaic defense system, which means different commanders across this wide country has now an autonomy in decision making, and they can easily spread this theater of war into other countries in order to somehow pressure the international community, at least the regional countries, to beg for a cessation of hostilities.
Definitely. And there's also an argument that an uncertain future awaits the South Caucasus because of what's going on, and the rising escalations between Iran, Israel and the US. What are your thoughts on that it's actually, cause of concern now, as you mentioned, and could this, conflict widen to different parts further than where it is now?
Well, as I said, the spillover effect of the conflict in and around Iran, let's put it this way, would be the worst nightmare for all three South Caucasus countries. First of all, it's Armenia and Azerbaijan, which are directly neighboring Iran. It's about the possible exodus of Iranian refugees northward. It can be humanitarian catastrophe. It can be as you said, spiraling the northward in terms of the violence. So in this very context, I think the leaders in South Caucasus, they should somehow also contribute to the de-escalation. I don't know how it can be done in this very context because all other neighboring powers, they are already trying their best in order to somehow bring the hostilities to an end. But nowadays it's really more complicated because even if the US and Israel would like to stop the hostilities, the Iranian top leadership rejects any talks. So it would also depend on how Iran's current authorities will behave.
Yes, and I think with that, it's, as you mentioned, even if they were to stop, Iran is very much upset that they've actually been struck with, trying to go down the diplomatic route, and the US has decided to go down a more military-based route. How real then are the risk of spillover into this region, whether it's humanitarian or security threats or economic disruption? Because we do know that we're also having the trip route that is also being implemented in this region.
Yeah.
Trump is very much big on it. It's been named after him. Do you find that any of this conflict could also spread to that particular, whether or not it's economic disruption, security or humanitarian?
Yeah, of course. These risks are there. We are trying to keep an eye on what may come and trying to assess the situation. However, I must say, this very situation may also bring certain opportunities to this region, because many region observers have been sharing this map presented by Flight Radar and similar websites. As you can see, the airspace around Iran is almost empty. To our north, Russia airspace is also more or less restricted. So we have the South Caucasus as a bottleneck in the east-west connectivity, which means our geopolitical significance has been elevated, especially in terms of connectivity, but for other reasons as well. In the future, even if the conflict around Iran is coming to an end tomorrow, the instability in the Middle East will definitely last for some time. It will somehow scare away investors, business people, other companies who want to deal with the region. And in this very case, South Caucasus may receive huge business opportunities, connectivity related issues. In this case, we must be prepared for also for being able to digest these opportunities as well.
Definitely, seeing it as I guess you're spinning it as what is the positive outcomes of this, as you mentioned, and I did point this out, that the airspace around Iran and the Middle East is very much empty, and it's going around, as you mentioned, the South Caucasus and Central Asia. But what would you say now if a new Iranian structure was to be implemented, a new government was to be formed? How would that what would that mean for the South Caucasus in regards to that? Would its structure of collapse and a renewed government actually impact the South Caucasus?
Wow. This is a super interesting and a super complicated question, because we have to first understand what kind of Iran is emerging out of the ashes of this conflict, whether it will be more assertive or more reserved. What we are observing right now is the hardliners in power, which means they may like to continue their hawkish policies, and especially since they received all these strikes and no other countries, even those which the Iranian leadership may somehow consider allies, did not come to their rescue. It can also isolate them, and it can also fuel these sentiments of distrust towards everyone. In this case, I may suspect a more aggressive, a more assertive policies by Tehran towards South Caucasus. On the other hand, if again we look at this coming situation more positively, Iran after the conflict may need more friendly neighbors, more investors, more business opportunities. And if we try to somehow positivize this atmosphere, then let's hope the Iranian leadership will try to be more constructive in its dialogue, especially with their neighboring and regional countries.
Yes, definitely. It'll be very interesting what this looks like after it all ends and how that impacts this particular region as well. Thank you, Mr. Husnova, for joining me this morning and for explaining that. Thank you. Now, foreign nationals from 19 countries are being evacuated from Iran into Azerbaijan through the Astara border as regional tensions escalate. More than 400 people have crossed since Saturday, with more departures expected in the coming days. The evacuations follow US and Israeli strikes on Iran and Tehran's retaliatory missile attacks across the region. Our A News correspondent Gulchin Hujadli-Lieva reports more.
A new wave of evacuees continues to arrive from Iran into Azerbaijan through the Astara border crossing as cross-border departures steadily increase. Authorities say more than 400 people have crossed into Azerbaijan since Saturday, including over 140 evacuees today, of whom 90 are foreign nationals. Approximately 30 Russian citizens were among the latest to enter safely after completing border procedures. Additional arrivals since morning included citizens of China, Tajikistan and Pakistan. Following document checks and registration, evacuees are being transported onward by specially arranged buses, with several vehicles continuing to depart from the checkpoint toward Baku.
In Iran, the situation is very tense. That's why we evacuate from Iran to Azerbaijan, and in border we have all facilities. There is no much tense in border. That's why we came here.
I was there in Urmia, Iran, just studying as MBBS just since 4 years, and just came here because of all. And there is no any other way. So we are very thankful of Azerbaijan that they welcome us and really good. But that's a hectic situation in Iran.
Overall figures show hundreds of foreign nationals from multiple countries have already been moved to safety through this corridor, which remains one of the few functioning land routes out of Iran. France's ambassador to Azerbaijan, Sophie Lagut, has also expressed gratitude to Azerbaijani authorities for assisting French citizens in leaving Iran. Border operations remain active, with further crossings expected as evacuation procedures continue. Gulchin Hojalieva, Nicat Kasumov, A News.
As tensions escalate between Iran, the United States and Israel, new restrictions have been introduced at the Kapikoy border crossing between Turkey and Iran. Day trip passenger crossings have been suspended, stopping regular movement across the border. A News' Ali Sultanzadeh brings you the latest from the ground.
Here at the Kapikoy border crossing between Turkey and Iran, movement has now been restricted. Turkey's Trade Minister Ömer Bolat says day trip passenger crossings at the Iranian border have been suspended. That means regular crossings are no longer taking place. However, Turkish citizens and third country nationals are still being allowed to enter Turkey from Iran. Iran in turn continues to accept its own citizens back across the border. Cargo transit remains ongoing under controlled conditions. Authorities say all units are operating on high alert as tensions across the region continue to escalate. This comes after recent strikes between US, Israel and Iran, which have pushed the situation into a new phase. Well, A News brings you the latest news from the region. Ali Sultanzadeh, Javed Aliyev, A News.
Global air travel is under severe strain as escalating strikes involving the US, Israel and Iran trigger widespread Middle East airspace closures. Key hubs remain shut or restricted, grounding thousands of flights and disrupting international connectivity with no clear timeline for recovery.
Global air travel is facing one of its most serious disruptions in years after US and Israeli strikes on Iran and Tehran's retaliation across the Gulf triggered widespread airspace closures. For a third straight day, major aviation hubs in Dubai, Abu Dhabi and Doha remain shut or operating under heavy restrictions. Dubai International Airport, normally the world's busiest airport for international travel and a critical east-west crossroads handling around 500 flights a day, has suspended operations after sustaining damage during retaliatory attacks. aircraft and crews are now stranded across multiple continents, throwing tightly coordinated global schedules into disarray. From Frankfurt to Bali, thousands of flights have been cancelled or diverted, leaving passengers stranded at airports worldwide. Some long-haul services to Australia have turned back mid-journey, while travellers scramble to find alternative routes. Authorities in several countries warn that disruption could continue as airlines are forced to navigate longer, more complex and more expensive flight corridors. The impact goes far beyond passenger travel. Gulf transit hubs serve as critical arteries for global trade and air cargo. Prolonged closures are adding pressure to already strained supply chains, while rising oil prices are driving up operational costs for airlines. Even if regional airspace reopens soon, aviation analysts say it could take days or longer for global schedules to stabilise as displaced aircraft and crews gradually return to position. Amid the disruption, the South Caucasus region, including Azerbaijan, has emerged as an increasingly important alternative transit corridor. Flight tracking data shows a sharp rise in long-haul east-west traffic rerouted through its airspace, underscoring its strategic position between Europe and Asia during regional instability. For now, uncertainty remains the overriding concern. With no clear timeline for the full reopening of regional skies, the aviation sector is once again confronting how quickly geopolitical tensions can disrupt global connectivity.
Now, Georgia's foreign ministry has responded to the escalation situation in the Middle East, expressing concern over the rising tensions and calling for diplomatic de-escalation. At the same time, political analysts are assessing what a prolonged confrontation could mean for regional security and Georgia itself. Our correspondent reports from Tbilisi.
The Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Georgia has expressed deep concern over ongoing developments in the Middle East. In a statement published on social media, the ministry underlined the importance of diplomatic engagement to ensure de-escalation and maintain regional stability. Authorities are calling on Georgian citizens in the region to follow official guidance and take necessary safety precautions. The ministry also confirmed that Georgia's embassies remain fully operational and ready to provide assistance if required. The escalation centers on growing military confrontation between Iran and Israel, a development that analysts say carries implications beyond the immediate conflict zone. According to political assessments, if air operations continue over an extended period, the region could face increased displacement and broader security pressures. For Georgia, this may translate into humanitarian and security challenges, including the possibility of refugee flows. Nini Nikolaishvili, Tbilisi, A-News.
Kazakhstan has reacted to the rapidly unfolding crisis in the Middle East, issuing diplomatic messages to key regional partners, while at the same time dealing with the impact of the conflict on its own citizens abroad. Our correspondent from Almaty has more.
President of Kazakhstan, Kassym-Jomart Tokayev, has sent personal messages to the leaders of the United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Bahrain and Kuwait, expressing support and solidarity with the peoples of these countries amid growing challenges. He condemned military actions undermining the sovereignty and security of states. Kazakhstan considers friendly and confirmed readiness to provide assistance while maintaining working contacts at the highest level. At the same time, authorities are focused on the safety of Kazakh citizens in the region. According to official data, 96 Kazakhstanis are currently in Iran, with diplomats preparing their evacuation via land routes. Another sensitive situation is unfolding in Dubai, where thousands of Kazakh tourists remain stranded after drone attacks on the city and its airports. Preliminary estimates suggest around 15,000 Kazakhstanis are currently in Dubai. The confrontation involving Iran, the United States and Israel is now moving beyond the Persian Gulf. For Central Asia and Kazakhstan, this is not distant geopolitics. Experts warn that prolonged instability could affect energy markets, trade routes, migration and regional security, increasing pressure on foreign policy decisions. Iran is strategically important for Kazakhstan as both a marked and a key link in the North-South transport corridor designed to provide the shortest route to the Persian Gulf and Indian markets. And analysts note that while an open conflict would make transit through Iran high risk, a potential change of regime in Tehran could lead to the lifting of sanctions and open for Kazakhstan the most direct access to the world's oceans. Fariza Kalimurtina, Almaty, A News.
It's time for a break now. When I return, I'll have a full update on the latest headlines, plus a look at what's making the front pages this morning. Stay with me.
Inside Politics delves deeply into the heart of global issues shaping our world today. Join me for your go-to source of political analysis from across the region and beyond.
On World Business, we meet the boardroom leaders making market-moving decisions. And find out how leaders are dealing with continuous technological disruption.
Good morning, you're watching Daybreak with me, Nadia Jani, and if you're just joining me, I'm taking you through the day's top stories. Let's take a look at the headlines. Iran declares Strait of Hormuz closed, threatening to set fire to ships as the US warns tougher strikes are ahead. France to boost nuclear warheads and strengthen deterrence, raising global nuclear conflict risks. And videos of Bill and Hillary Clinton's Epstein testimonies are released. Now let's take a look at the story shaping the day across the globe, and we head first to France 24 website, and it's in regards to Emmanuel Macron's announcement yesterday. He said, "To be free, we have to be feared," Macron says in a keynote nuclear speech. Now we do know that France will increase its nuclear warheads for the first time in decades. The announcement came, as I mentioned, on Monday, saying that Macron said that he wants to be free, and to be free, we have to be feared. He said that France was entering a new phase in its nuclear deterrence strategy, and mentioned that what he would like is for Europeans to regain control of their own destiny. He emphasized that the country's nuclear power would be in the service of peace for France, and France is the only nuclear power in the European Union currently. France is also the world's fourth largest nuclear power after Russia, in the top spot, followed by the US and then the UK. So it's something that we'll be keeping a close watch on in regards to that, but France is definitely leading in regards to nuclear warheads after Russia, and then followed by US and the UK. Now we head over to the next headline for today, and that's on Al Jazeera, and it says Nepal rivals rally on final day of poll campaign, PM urges citizens to vote. Now we know that elections are currently underway, and we should be able to find out what that result looks like on Thursday. Now the interim Prime Minister Sushila Karki has been appealing to voters to make sure they get out and maintain the peace. Now, the Himalayan Republic will elect a new parliament on Thursday, replacing the interim government that led the country of 30 million people since last year, September, after the uprising, which led to 77 people being killed. Now, there's been 2 weeks of campaigning, which have showcased a wave of younger candidates promising to tackle Nepal's struggling economy. Nearly 19 million people have also registered to vote, including 800,000 who are likely to take part for the first time. So that's a high number of young people making sure that their vote is registered and heard. Now, there are a few runners and riders that are taking place that I'm just going to quickly run you through. So you've got Gagan Thapa, who's 49, the new head of the country's oldest party called the Nepali Congress, and he told a news outlet that he wanted to end the old age club of revolving around veteran leaders. Next, you then have Mayor Balandra Shah. Now, he's a 35-year-old rapper turned politician, widely known as Balen, and he is very popular among the Gen Z voters. So we'll see whether or not he is able to actually bag the top spot. And then finally, we have KP Sharma Oli. So he's a 74-year-old Marxist leader, ousted as Prime Minister last year, and is also in the running and has also very popular backing because he's been in that position for a while. We'll make sure we keep you updated as to how this continues and what the outcome will be on Thursday. We now head to our third headline today, and it's on the A News website. It's day 3 of the US-Iran conflict. Further strikes and oil prices surge. This is going to be everywhere. We know that Saturday the US kicked off a number of strikes in Tehran, and also Israel joined in with a joint military strategic action in this region. And due to that, Tehran has also sent retaliatory drone strikes to a number of US bases in the Middle East, going from Qatar, Ryder, Dubai, Saudi Arabia, and a number of other countries in and around the area. Now, Vice President J.D. Vance said on Monday that to Fox News that the US is not looking to have a long conflict or drag it on for years and years, hoping that it will actually be quite a short time of conflict. Trump has said that the operation could continue for some weeks and that it was unclear who was in charge of Iran. But there are a number of things that he really wants to get sorted. His main objective is to make sure that Iran does not have any nuclear weapons. As I mentioned, it's the 3rd day since the conflict spread across the region, and we have more information in relation to the story on this particular report coming up.
Iran has warned that US military bases in the Gulf could be targeted as the air campaign enters its 3rd day. Tehran has also declared the Strait of Hormuz closed, threatening to fire on ships attempting to pass. US Central Command says the waterway remains open, but energy markets are already on edge. Around 1/5 of the world's oil supply normally moves through the narrow channel. Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi said Tehran does not want the conflict to spread, but argued that American facilities across the region are within reach.
When the United States attacks us, whether by fighter jets or the ships it deploys, they have access to our territory to strike with all kinds of missiles and aircraft. We cannot reach their territory, but we can reach their bases. I think those bases are legitimate targets.
He also urged neighboring governments to pressure Washington rather than Tehran. Meanwhile, Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu claimed the campaign would not become an endless war, but acknowledged it could take time.
I said it could be quick and decisive. It may take some time, but it's not going to take years. It's not an endless war. In fact, it's an effort right now to achieve the peace that we all yearn and pray for. And I think together we'll achieve it.
In Washington, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth said the operation is limited to destroying Iran's ballistic missile and naval capabilities. Secretary of State Marco Rubio echoed that objective.
That said, we would not mind, we would not be heartbroken, and we hope that the Iranian people can overthrow this government and establish a new future for that country. We would love for that to be possible. But the objective of this mission is the destruction of their ballistic missile capabilities and of their naval capabilities.
Rubio also responded to Iranian reports that a school in Minab was struck, reportedly killing civilians. He said the United States would not deliberately target a school and that the military is reviewing the incident. On the ground, the US military says it has struck more than 1,250 targets inside Iran and destroyed 11 Iranian ships. 6 American service members have been killed and 18 injured. Iranian authorities say at least 555 people have been killed across 131 cities, though those figures have not been independently verified. Washington says 49 senior Iranian leaders, including Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei, were killed in the opening strikes.
In Gaza, fuel could run out within days after Israel shut all border crossings. Displaced residents warn famine fears are returning as prices surge.
In Gaza, officials say fuel supplies may last only 3 to 4 days after Israel closed all crossings last Saturday, following joint airstrikes with the United States on Iran. The territory depends entirely on fuel deliveries by truck from Israel and Egypt. Without new shipments, hospitals risk losing electricity, and water and sanitation systems could stop working.
If the crossings remain closed, the Gaza Strip, due to the high population density and the many needs, will inevitably enter a famine, a black famine. What fault do we in the Gaza Strip have in relation to regional and international wars between Iran, Israel, and America?
Local aid coordinators say stocks of flour, vegetables, and other staples are running low. Aid agencies have halted some operations as deliveries are blocked by the closed crossings. Wounded patients are being blocked from leaving for medical treatment abroad, leaving many without care. Israel's military body, Kogat, which controls access, claims enough food entered during the October truce to supply the population for an extended period and did not comment on possible fuel shortages. Meanwhile, the border closures are already driving up prices in local markets.
The market prices have really gone up. Tomatoes are now $6.49. A bag of flour is $64.80, ever since they heard about the closure of the crossings.
The shutdown also casts doubt on a broader US-backed plan to end the war, which involves reopening the Rafah crossing with Egypt, increasing aid flows, and rebuilding the Strip.
France is set to expand its nuclear arsenal for the first time in 34 years, deepening cooperation with European partners. The move raises questions about Europe's strategic autonomy and the continent's security within NATO. Our European correspondent, Anita Sharma, has more of the detail and the outcome.
Welcome to This Day in Europe as France gets set to expand nuclear warhead capacity for the first time in 34 years and will no longer be transparent about the size of its arsenal. The country is estimated to have about 300 nuclear warheads right now. At the Ile-Long Naval Submarine Base in Brittany, President Emmanuel Macron said, quote, "To be free, one needs to be feared, and to be feared, one needs to be powerful." Macron outlined an advanced deterrence strategy that would establish closer, more structured nuclear security ties separate from but designed to complement NATO's existing framework. France proposed temporary deployment of its nuclear-armed aircraft for 8 European countries, including Great Britain and Greece. And all countries are on board. Sweden, Belgium, and Poland signaled they are ready to participate. Germany and France indicated they would establish a, quote, steering group for closer cooperation on deterrence. Denmark said it formally agreed to cooperate due to the military threat from Russia expected to increase in the coming years. Dutch officials maintained this fits their goal of Europeans having greater responsibility over the continent's security amid Russia's war in Ukraine. The US, UK, and France are the only nuclear-armed members of NATO, with France being the only EU member possessing its own nuclear weapons. As France expands its nuclear force and draws European partners into deeper coordination, the debate goes far beyond warheads and delivery systems. It strikes at the core of Europe's security architecture, testing how much strategic autonomy the continent truly seeks and how firmly it remains anchored to the U.S. nuclear umbrella, and whether NATO can evolve without fracturing. In an era of renewed great power rivalry, the question is no longer whether Europe should strengthen deterrence, but how to do so without triggering division, escalation, or a new arms race on its own continent. For A News, I'm Anita Sharma in Arnhem, Netherlands.
As of the latest updates on Epstein's links to the Clintons, former US President Bill Clinton and former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton have testified behind closed doors about their ties to Jeffrey Epstein, with both denying any knowledge of his crimes. We now have released footage of what all that came about last week.
Do you wish to provide an opening statement?
On Monday, former US President Bill Clinton and former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton denied any prior knowledge of crimes committed by convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein during separate closed-door testimonies before the United States House Committee on Oversight and Accountability. Bill Clinton told lawmakers he never witnessed wrongdoing and said his wife had nothing to do with Jeffrey Epstein. He confirmed writing a note for Epstein's 50th birthday, said photos in the files were likely taken in Brunei, and added he does not recognize a redacted woman shown in the images.
I'm here to offer what little I know so I can do my part to prevent something like this from happening again. I have to just say one personal thing. Since Hillary came in yesterday, she had nothing to do with Jeffrey Epstein. Nothing.
Hillary Clinton told lawmakers she does not recall ever meeting Epstein and said she had no information about his criminal activities.
As we all know, however, too often congressional investigations are partisan political theater, which is an abdication of duty and an insult to the American people. This committee justified its subpoena to me based on its assumption that I have information regarding the investigations into the criminal activities of Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. Let me be as clear as I can. I do not. As I stated in my sworn declaration on January 13th, I had no idea about their criminal activities. I do not recall ever encountering Mr. Epstein. I never flew on his plane or visited his island, homes, or offices. I have nothing to add to that. Like every decent person, I've been horrified by what we have learned about their crimes.
Tensions rose during her private deposition when she learned that a photograph taken inside the hearing had been leaked, breaching committee rules. She threatened to end her testimony. Proceedings were briefly paused and the image was later removed. During questioning, Hillary Clinton was asked how she felt after seeing photographs of her husband in the Epstein files. Clinton replied that she was not there to offer opinions or speculate. So far, there is no suggestion that either of the Clintons has been accused of criminal wrongdoing in connection with Epstein.
Rap star turned politician Balendra Shah is emerging as a major contender in Nepal's March 5th general election. The 35-year-old, known locally as Balin, is challenging the country's long-standing political establishment. Nepal has spent more than 3 decades under fragile coalition governments, dominated by 2 communist parties and the centrist Nepali Congress, with nearly 19 million eligible voters, including over 915,000 first-timers. Balin is hoping public anger at the former government and at attracting support across generations. Turning to Canada, Prime Minister Mark Carney visited India, stating the announcement made between the 2 ministers, where a 10-year nuclear energy deal was announced. I'm now joined by Umesh Kumar Agarwal, geopolitical advisor in India, to discuss Mark Carney's visit to India and to speak with Narendra Modi, as well as what came out of it. Good morning.
Happy morning.
My first question to you, Umesh, is how significant is this deal with India and Canada nuclear energy deal?
The basic thing is the ties between India and Canada are going for a reset. Last year during Trudeau rule, if you see, India and Canada had even shut down their own embassies they were recalling the ambassadors. But now, if you see, under Mike Carney, we are having a reset of a relationship, and this 2.6 billion uranium supply agreement has been signed. The significant thing is lot of agreements have been signed that includes defense, critical energies, small and modular reactors, education, renewable energies, and even LNG supply. The two countries have also, we both have also agreed to set the terms of reference on signing the free trade agreement between us. One more thing, if you see that Canadian universities have agreed to set up educational campus in India as well. And if I remember, in last year, in 2025, Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji traveled to Canada for the annual G7 summit. So this is one of the most important things. Both the countries aim that they would like to take the trade to around $50 billion. And when Mike Carney landed in India, he actually landed in Mumbai and he spoke to a lot of industrialists there. Also, one more thing, he also mentioned that India is not a middle power anymore and it's an ambitious power. And Mike Carney even stated that in India, the Canadian pension funds have invested around $100 billion. Lot of statements were made. He recollected about Swami Vivekananda, who was in Canada, and he quoted him saying that he made a famous statement: "Arise, awake, and do not rest until the goal is achieved." A lot of things were happening during this visit. And both the countries also agreed that terrorism, radical jihadism, all of them have to be curtailed.
Mr. Agarwal, thank you so much. Sorry, I just because we don't have a lot of time and I want to get through a number of questions. My next one was India now seems to be the major house of deals. We saw that recently they've made deals with the UK, the EU member states as well, like France, are making key trade agreements. Why is India so critical for trade with Western partners?
Basically, if you see, Canada has been at the receiving end of the Trump administration. Right now, the entire Anglosphere have made a trade deal with us, including America, including Canada, UK, Australia, New Zealand. And if you see, after 2 days, the Finland Prime Minister is coming to India as well. So a lot of my point here is that India has emerged as a critical driver of growth for many economies. Everybody wants to be part of this story. They want to have trade with India. They want to do investments. They want to ensure that India is as a cusp was what China was in 1990. So India has a population which is like 67% of our population is below the age of 35. And this is a very good market also. We are 18% of the world's population. And this is an opportunity that none would like to miss. We had a very frosty relationship with Canada. Last year, there was a Khalistan issue which was supported by Pakistan's ISI and other agencies, and they were trying to wedge ties between India and Canada. From there, if you see, there is a complete turnaround, and right now India and Canada are sharing one of the best relationships. Everybody wants to be part of the India growth story. They want to be in India. They want to provide their services to India. They want to benefit with India in terms of trade and transfer of technology and everything.
Great. Mr. Agarwal, thank you so much for joining me. I'm sorry that it was so short, but you've explained that perfectly. So thank you again for your insights and for joining me this morning.
That's my pleasure, Razan. Thank you very much.
We now head over to Washington and what it has said in regards to its strikes in Tehran, as well as it not wanting for this to be a prolonged outstretch of war in the region. We now head to our correspondent, Ubay Shabanda, who reports from Washington, D.C.
U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance told reporters on Monday that President Trump will not entangle the United States into a years-long conflict with no clear objective, as White House officials warn that U.S. and Israeli strikes against Iran will likely escalate in scale. The vice president reiterated that Iran must never be allowed to obtain a nuclear weapon, and that Operation Epic Fury's main goal is to ensure that Iranian authorities end once and for all any ambition or desire to develop a nuclear bomb in the future. And in his first live address since launching major combat operations against Iran, President Trump said that the campaign is moving, quote, substantially ahead of schedule. President Trump stressed again on Monday that the operation will continue as long as necessary, justifying the timing of the strikes by saying that this was the last best chance to eliminate the Iranian threat. Trump administration officials say that talks with Iran collapsed when Iranian negotiators made clear to their American counterparts that they would not forego nuclear enrichment as part of a deal. Secretary of State Marco Rubio told reporters that the military operation was also necessary in order to prevent Iran from eventually accumulating a massive stockpile of short-range and long-range missiles and kamikaze drones. That would have then made Iran an immeasurably more difficult threat to handle. The U.S. Embassy in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, was struck by 2 Iranian drones, and concerns remain high that Iran will continue to launch waves of similar strikes across the Middle East. For now, U.S. military officials remain confident that they, along with their Israeli allies, will be able to successfully degrade Iran's missile launch capacity, while working with Arab allies to ensure that air defense systems are fully supplied to intercept Iran's ballistic missiles. Ubi Chibander, A News, Washington.
Now for some tech news, and fast food chain Burger King is using AI to help monitor staff and customer interactions to ensure professional language is used. Also, Samsung is offering its mobile customers private screens to avoid those nosy neighbors looking at what you're doing while you're using your phone. Here's Nathan Kamanga with more on those stories on our tech show, Switch.
Have you ever heard the saying, a little kindness goes a long way? Well, Burger King is putting that to the test by training an AI-powered headset designed to detect how friendly employees are with customers. Restaurant Brands International, which is the chain's parent company, says the OpenAI device is currently being tested in 500 US locations. Beyond monitoring customer interactions, the unit can assist staff with preparing menu items and can even alert management when supplies are running low, all while listening to phrases like thank you and welcome. So maybe a little kindness really does go a long way, especially if that way leads straight to your boss. Now, would you walk away from a multi-million-dollar contract if by any chance it did not align with your personal principles? Well, that's the decision AI company Anthropic has just made, delivering a blow to the US Defense Department after military officials reportedly asked it to bend its ethical policies. The request would have allowed its technology to be used in fully autonomous weapons and to conduct mass surveillance within the United States. CEO Dario Amodei said in a statement that despite pressure from the US government, the company could not, in good conscience, agree to their demands. In response, US President Donald Trump has directed his administration to halt work with Anthropic, which currently holds a contract worth about $200 million. But at the same time, OpenAI, which is the company behind ChatGPT, has announced an agreement with the government to deploy its AI models on classified cloud networks. So it seems OpenAI is open to the opportunity. And finally, Samsung has created a buzz in the tech world. The company has unveiled its Galaxy S26 lineup of smartphones, but one feature in particular is drawing attention. Dubbed the world's first privacy display on a mobile device, the feature allows users, with the tap of a button, to make on-screen information harder to view for someone sitting right next to them. The technology is so precise that it can block out specific parts of the screen or automatically activate when certain apps are open. Now, let's see if more tech companies will be able to introduce a similar feature to their flagship products. That's all for now. Be sure to catch up with us for more tech news and insights on the next show.
How interesting. I think I might have to invest in a Samsung phone to make sure that nosy neighbors don't look at my screen. But anyway, thank you so much for watching Daybreak with me, Nadia Jani. I'll be back tomorrow to take you through the latest updates throughout the morning. Make sure you stay tuned to A News.